deer.
Are you talking about Wagner?
It was like late 1500s, early 1600s.
No, this is recent. It sounds.
Hello, folks. My name is Mark Nystrom. I'm fairly new here working at the library, but we're very glad to see you here. And tonight's presentation on the whitetail deer in Eastern Native American Lifeways is our presentation tonight. We'd like to welcome Ray Hardy, who is a Connecticut DEEP Master Wildlife Conservationist, and Jay Levy, or is it Levy? Levy, good, first time, from Mohegan Tribal Historic Preservation. So I hope you have a great evening, and looks like all kinds of cool stuff to share. So thank you.
Thank you.
So what are we talking about? You want to open?
Sure. So, first of all, I have my notes just because I've been through so many talks lately on all different subjects. My mind has been boggled, so if you look at my notes, just forgive me, please. Akwe, Wigwalman, Jay Nawiswonk, Wigan Dupqua, Yotai Mapawiak, Gatai Podonka Ki Quinantucket. Hello and welcome. My name is Jay, and good evening. We are on Podunk land next to the Long Tidal River, and I'm glad that everybody's able to join us here tonight. I don't want to go too much into the beginning because you had an intro too that was wonderful.
It's a good time for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The book that I'm referring to is Naskapi by Frank Speck. It's written back in about 1935, I think it was first published in 35. And this was he was with the Naskapi people, which were in Labrador. Now they're Algonquin-speaking people, just like the people down here. Speck was attracted to these people because they still seem to retain a lot of the old traditions. They were far enough away from European influence that they still retained a lot of their old traditions. And I think that a lot of their belief systems would be similar with the people here and the East Coast. We've got Algonquin-speaking people all the way down to what, North Carolina?
Yeah.
Like that. So it's pretty much Canada all the way down the coast, North Carolina, and speaking various dialects. And like Jay mentioned here, Podunk people spoke the Algonquin dialect, and they lived. Actually, the main village was in East Hartford, but they hunted out here and they had ceremonial sites out here. Let me jump right in here to kind of set the mood for our talk. Much could be quoted, as I have heard it discussed, to show how the spirit of religious thought and practice is aimed to exert influence upon the spirits of animals, developed to an extent that converts animals into creatures comparable to supernatural beings. It is through them that life, health, and happiness come to the lot of the native while living, and hence they become the primary objectives of religious zeal. So blessed with the feeling that they owe a debt to the animal world for the sacrifice of life in their behalf, they have developed a system quite profound and rational in a spiritual sense. And it is quite profound. It's very detailed as far as behavior, what a hunter needs to do prior to hunting, during the hunt, after the hunt. It's most of it's pretty well spelled out in their traditions as far as ritual procedures that they would follow. It's pretty much can be summed up in respect and reciprocity. Respect the animals that are equals on a spiritual level. Outer form may be different, but on a spiritual level, they're the same. Basically, we're the same thing, and it's difficult to kill another being when you view them like that. So there has to be a whole lot of understanding of how to work through this process. And that's where the reciprocity comes in, respect and reciprocity. So taking a life also obligates the individual to giving something back. And that can be in a variety of manner. It can be by song, ceremony, could be objects, could be offering tobacco, other things like that. There was always some reciprocal action. So that was always very critical. And the hunters, usually the way they understood the way things work, if they had bad luck hunting, it's because they broke one of the rules. They may not have known what the rule was, they found out afterwards, but then that would have to be rectified. So there's very specific rules about how to address the animal, how to approach the animal. And like I say, preparation prior to the hunt would be often in many tribes would be kind of a prolonged preparation. Sometimes it would be purifying and sweat lodge,
Yeah.
abstaining from relations with your wife, avoiding certain foods, and
That was only not only ceremonial, but it also masked the odor when you were going to hunt.
yeah,
So that sweat and that purification placed in the fire were also not only ceremonial, but they also had a practical use of masking the odor when you were going to hunt. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, that's sort of practical purpose in that manner too. I've heard of them, rubbing themselves down with like sweet fern or pine needles or something like that. That's nowadays you can go to Cabela's and spend a lot of money on scent block and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Back then, it worked. I do a lot of. I've been tormenting deer for, gosh, I don't know, most of my life. And I'm a vegetarian for that reason. Well, more than just that reason, but that's one of the reasons that I'm a vegetarian is because my scent is different. I don't smell like hopefully, I don't smell like a carnivore. So that's hopefully one box I can check off. So yeah, that definitely has a practical reason. One of the things I wanted to mention too, is that, as he says in here, Nascapi stressed the importance of dreams and dream interpretation, of communing with the spirit world and of rituals honoring animal spirits. That seems to be pretty widespread, not only in native traditions, but all over the world with indigenous people. And dreams were very important. And it is said that you can connect with the spirit of the particular animal that you're hunting through your dreams. And often there will be some kind of indication, it may be metaphorical or it may be literal in the dreams, that will lead you to, in some cases, where the deer actually are. There are, with the Nascapi, now their primary animal that they work with were caribou. And down here, whitetail deer are kind of substitute for that. We don't have too many caribou around here, but with the deer. Yeah, but they would have one person that specialized as a dreamer. That was his job. He didn't, in the case of the Nascapi, he didn't hunt the caribou. He would accept meat from the hunters, but he didn't personally never hunt the caribou. It was kind of like had this deal, this arrangement, and he would dream where the deer were or the caribou were, and sometimes there was a little question as to exact locations on the landscape. A lot of peoples, all circumboreal, all around the globe, use what they call scapulomancy, which is taking the scapula of the animal that is in question to be hunted and scorch it on a fire. And the resulting cracks to the dreamer would create a map of the territory. And that seems to us, it seems like kind of out there, but it worked. But it worked for them. And and if the dreamer's suggestions or account from his dreams and from the scapulomancy didn't work, eventually he got canned. We got somebody else that were a little bit more reliable as far as being able to do that. And it can happen. You get close enough to a place and an animal and or animals, plural, it is possible to dream with them. So something to think about. You have to be a little bit obsessive to get to that point, but it is possible. And so that's kind of the quick overview of some of the background of their belief systems. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the importance of the deer to Native people. You know, it was like the buffalo out west. That's how important the deer were here. You know, it provided everything. The deer was a gift from the Creator, a gift of the land. And so in order to have that respect, you know, we always made sure that we used every part of the deer. And we still do. A lot of us are hunters still, and use that same reciprocity that Ray was talking about. You know, we view them as brother and sister and like another living being, like you said. If we did not, you know, we're taking their life so that they could strengthen our own body. So if we were to not offer thanks for that, it would be like stealing from the land, or taking, which is just not our way to do. Route 44 right here, or I don't know where it is, I don't know where I am, but Route 44 is an old Indian path, and it used to be called the Nipmuc Path, and it's a lot of different names, but Route 44, yeah, as an old Indian path, soon became a horse path, and then an oxen path, and then a cart path, and then a road, and then a two-lane road, and then a highway, you know. But before all that, it started out as a deer path, a deer trail. And before it was even an Indian path. And those deer led us to the water. They led us to around the landscape the easiest way. So a lot of the roads that we see today that we travel on are old deer paths, you know. And like Ray said, this is quote-unquote hunting grounds here. So there would be, you know, we would hunt when the leaves would change color, like October and November. That's when the best hunting would happen, is when the leaves changed color. And everything we did was dependent on the environment. You know, when we see the geese returning back from migration, we knew that the maple trees were ready to tap. All these different things that we would listen to the environment and see and observe would indicate ways of survival. But you know, things have changed drastically and so quickly. You know, geese don't migrate anymore, and you know, myself, I hunt at Stop and Shop now. You know, in the meat section, you know, the frozen food. But there was a time when the first Europeans arrived, it drastically changed. And in 1642, my Aunt Sonoma, who was a Narragansett Indian chief here, I have a quote here from him. He made the observation of the loss of deer and the European destruction of native lands. He says, "Our fathers had plenty of deer and skins. Our plains were full of deer. We, as Indian people, shall all be gone shortly, just as the deer are dwindling." And that's 1642. And, you know, we see Europeans arriving 1614, 1620. So that's only in 20 years, all these deer are almost extinct and gone out of Connecticut. And in the 17 and 1800s, we see elk and wolf and even turkeys extinct in Connecticut. So deer came very close to extinction in this area. The Cherokee down in North Carolina mentioned in the 1740s the same thing, that the deer are almost all gone. And but you know, after the 1800s, you know, they start coming back after a lot of the farmlands are being taken back over by the woods, and the forests are starting to regrow, so the deer are coming back. But they were almost out of here, just like many other animals that became extinct in Connecticut. One thing I wanted to also mention was, some of the things that I brought here from my family. My wife is Pequot and Narragansett Indian, and I'm Cheapchat Indian, and we use a lot of the deer, not only other animals, but we use a lot of the deer for many other things. And in the past we did too. Her ancestors used them all the time. Different tools, different instruments, projectile points for hunting, used from the antlers or even bones, and stone, of course. Games used for different types of skills that you would learn to hunt. You get your accuracy right, used, made from bones of deer. With rawhide, made for drums, and buckskin made for clothing, and blankets from the skins, and breechcloths. All these different things you could come up and visit afterwards. Just simple bags, everything. Antlers for handles, even bone for handles as well. This is my pipe cleaner, and it cleans out my pipe, but it's also an antler. It's got an eagle carving on there. You can pass that around. And when we're in ceremony, the antlers, we pick up the hot rocks with the antlers, so we don't touch them. So we pick up the hot rocks and we move them that way. So, I mean, every part of the deer is used because it is a gift. It is something that we need to respect as a resource. We see deer remains in all of archaeological sites in Connecticut and throughout New England. I mean, so it was very important. Just like I said, just as important as the buffalo that were out west. When Europeans arrived here, they saw them as property, and we just viewed them differently as more of a gift. That's why they were just hunted out of almost extinction so quickly within 20 to 30 years. But I don't know if Ray had some more to say, but I wanted to share a song and a story with you that was passed down to me. If you have time, Ray. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, this I'll just make it quick. This story is about the deer, and it's a story that is about a Mohegan and a Pequot man and woman. The man's name is Skizix, and the woman's name is Ponima. And they were lovers. They were been together for many, many years. And the man one day went out hunting, and he shot a deer. And he came back to his village, and he had the deer wrapped around his shoulders and was bringing it back. He was going to give it to his family, his wife. And he saw Ponima talking with another man. And he quickly became angry, and he got jealous. And he took the antlers off of that deer, and he ripped them off, and he ran over to her, and he put the antlers on her forehead. And that's where they stuck, and that's where they grew, and they kept growing and growing. And they grew right out of the wigwam. And Ponima, she got really worried and scared, and she asked her father to help. And her father got the medicine man, and he came over, and he had some oils, and he put the oils on the antlers, and the antlers started to crack, and they fell off. But what was left was these nubs right on her forehead still. And we tell this story because we tell the story to usually our young ones. We have lots of stories that we tell our young ones. We tell this story because one of the reasons is to think before you act. That you could jealousy could make someone do things that they might regret, and they can hurt the people that they love. So this is one of the reasons why we tell this story. And those two nubs stayed on Ponima for the rest of her life, and the man was heard different stories. He was either banished from the village or he felt so ashamed that he left. But he never came back to his wife. Those two nubs remained on her as a reminder that the harm that jealousy can cause. So we tell that story, that deer story, to our kids, and just these valuable lessons that the deer bring us to be better human beings. That's the jealousy story we like to call that. Yeah. But this is one of our instruments that we use. And these are the hooves of the deer. There are many around here, and there's more here. We'll pass this around too. And but I'd like to share with you a song that it's for the warriors that go out there and they go hunt for these deer. And this is a song in their honor, and also in the honor of the deer. Ya hey ya yo ha yo hey 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 ya hey ya yo ha yo hey 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 ya hey ya yo ha yo hey 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 ya ha yo hey hey ya ya hey hey yo hey 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 ya ha yo hey 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 yo hey hey ya hey hey yo. Whitetail pues wam se cook me quan ya mo che no chan hey yo hey yo hey ya hey yo. Thank you.
Were the men the only ones that would do the singing?
No, everybody was involved. Yeah. A lot of the songs were social songs, and so you'd go into the longhouse, and those songs would just last literally like 12 hours and go on for days and days, just be singing and dancing.
Well, do you still have the powwows that were
Yeah,
done in town?
Over here, I don't think so. Not so much anymore. I think that was a powwow society that ran that, and I don't know if they're still around. But yeah, I remember those years and years ago.
Well, now, where did you learn? Did you learn your language from your?
I speak my wife's language.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was adopted out from my people, and I grew up in Connecticut, away from them. But I grew up in her community and in the Pequot community, the Mohegan community. I'm a part of many indigenous communities, but those two are prevalent. You know, I'm married into their family there. So I speak their language. I know their culture and their ways, their ceremonies, and I teach their youth and teach the language there. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
My wife. This is my child's moccasins, but from buckskin, from deer.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're so really soft too.
Yeah, yeah. You have to tan
how
them
do
the
you
right
tan?
way.
Oh, tan. So you
I didn't tan those, or she didn't, but
no, but what's the process in the beginning after you skin the deer?
there's different methods, and probably Ray could probably talk best to that. But I've used eggs or brains, and then there's modern chemicals and things that you could use different ways. If you want the furs on them, or you just want the buckskin, or if you want the rawhide, there's different ways to the process of that. You know that?
I mean, traditionally, braid tanning
Brain, yeah,
was used.
from the deer. Yeah.
So they would, and depending on whether they want to keep the hair on. Now, winter fur, you pull it out in clumps. Doesn't make a good rug. Doesn't make good clothing. Doesn't make much of anything. It's good for the deer, but not so much good for people. Summer. This one is, I believe, was killed in late fall, so it still has a summer coat, and this is all pretty solid. So, in a case like this, where you wanted to keep the fur on, Uh, first process, a lot of times with a large frame, you would stretch that hide out with the skin side towards you, and then scrape all the fat, all the flesh, make sure that's totally clean of all the fat and the flesh,
Sons.
and then it's soaked in. They say that every animal has enough brains to tan their own hide,
Oh,
so that probably applies to us too. But but a deer brain it's mostly fat. Is what it amounts to. So like eggs and fatty materials
thing, yeah.
substitute for modern methods. But the brain was soaked in that mix of water and brain, and then it was worked after that. And it was worked. It was worked a lot. It's a lot of hard work. I tried to do.
well, how do you work it?
Scrape, use different tools to scrape the fat and the meat and the membranes off of the skins, that's
have to-
remaining on the back of this.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
after-
even the shoulder blade is a really good instrument or tool to scrape that off of. But other, stone tools as well.
So you'd stretch it out some.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then after it's soaked in the brain, then you work it again. You want to work all that fatty material into the hide and break all the fibers down. And that I helped a friend one time do braid tanning on a buffalo hide. Didn't finish. It spent full day and still a lot of work to do on that.
Yeah.
It's a tremendous amount of work to break all the fibers
Days,
down
yeah.
and work all that fatty brain material into that. And then it was smoked. And a lot of times what would be done is be like a little teepee type framework, wrap the hide around that and if you're keeping the fur's on the outside. And then you put smoky wet leaves and damp woods and stuff like that, and just smoke it.
Huh.
And that would allow it to stay soft. But like I say, it's a tremendous amount of work. Nowadays we have modern methods where you can do it pretty quickly, but back then everything was pretty much brain tanned.
This is how my son wears it. When he dances.
Good. How old is he?
He's just turned 17.
I think it's wonderful to continue and follow along with the tradition.
Yeah, I'm so blessed that he's able to too, because there was a time in Connecticut when it was illegal for his people to speak their own language and to dance their own dances and sing their own songs.
Really?
Yeah, so for him to be able to do that now, I'm just so proud, of him to be able to do that. These were his when he was little. So he doesn't fit those no more, but.
Yeah, just to underscore what Jay was saying about the importance of deer in Native peoples here in the East. And that actually goes down into Mexico as well. There are whitetail deer down there, and they are very significant to the people there as well. Farther north, you end up with caribou, but whitetail deer are pretty widespread, and they were as important as Jay was mentioning. We hear so much about the plains people and the buffalo. Like everything was geared to the buffalo. Everything worked with the buffalo, and the same thing with here with the deer. Everything was worked around the deer. People knew their land intimately. They knew.
Well, the deer followed the pattern of the roadway that they had created then. I
Yeah,
guess.
and like Jay was mentioning, they will travel the path of least resistance. It's funny, you walk through the woods, you walk straight through the woods, and there's a hill, and so you kind of gravitate towards just contouring around it, and chances are you're going to end up on a deer path.
Yeah.
The easiest way around.
Yeah.
Automatically, if you're looking for the easiest route through the woods, you'll end
Yeah.
up on a deer trail. And
Sometimes it's hard to see.
yeah.
But, you can see the leaves that either moved a little bit or shifted to the side, branched slightly up the jar. But you could see their path and the least resistance. Yeah. And then before 1,000 years ago, we were hunting them with atlatls like this. So this is a spear thrower or spear chucker, I guess. This has an antler on the end here, but I didn't bring the spear part because it's about from me to Ray. It's really long, and it just is an extension of your arm pretty much, and it would just be thrown towards the deer that are being pushed in, and they were being pushed in by a lot of the Indian people here would hunt with dogs, and the dogs would go out, find those deer, and bring them in where the hunters would be waiting for them, and they would be either pushed into a ravine area, funneled in that way, or into a little wetland which has lots of boulders and maybe even some stone walls where the deer would be pushed in, where they would have to start jumping and start losing their balance, somewhere where they would just not be aware of the hunters there, and that's where they would be speared and killed. So yeah, there was lots of different hunting methods. We were talking about it earlier, such as snares and even deadfalls, traps. Besides,
What's a deadfall trap?
What?
want to explain a deadfall trap?
Big log, or sometimes rock, depending on the size of the animal. With the deer would have to be pretty big, and a lot of times they put a kind of a corral to direct the animal in, whatever it happened to be, deer or whatever. They would have to place things that were attractive to the deer, acorns perhaps, and it'd be a big log inside of this framework, and once the deer got in and started feeding, it would trip the support, and that would come down. It may or may not kill it, but it'd be trapped. But, another method was a spring pole snare, and that's mentioned in some of the early. It's actually Mort's Relation, which is like 1620 something. This was written in Plymouth Plantation, and actually, I think Governor Winthrop got caught in a spring pole snare by accident. But what it amounts to is a large sapling, and to handle a deer, it would have to take several people to bend this green sapling over, and then with a carved device to hold it in place. It's very sensitive. It didn't take much to trip that. And then a noose, and sometimes the noose would be elevated off the ground with little forked sticks, so it's up a little bit, and acorns and stuff would be for deer would be put in that. Deer come in and step that, and once he moved, they would tighten around his leg and pull him up. It may not get him off the ground. A friend of mine tried that years ago, and it didn't get the deer off the ground. The deer tore everything up and broke loose and took off. But it would have to be several people to bend that thing over to hold it. But that was one way of doing it. They had community drives, and in some cases, some of the earlier primary accounts talked about they would have like a funnel shape walls that may be out of all brush and stones and so forth. They're run down, maybe in some cases maybe a mile long on each side, and very wide at the mouth, and funneled down into a corral. And then so the hunters would wait on the outside of the corral, and then maybe 30 or 40 people in the tribe would then make a whole lot of racket and push the deer, and the deer would follow that right into the corral. That's pretty much the same way we capture geese now, or abandoned geese.
Oh,
Same thing. We have it's plastic mesh fencing, but it comes in, wings come in like that. We herd the geese ashore, and they walk right into it. So it's the same thing with the deer, but it was on a very large scale.
Yeah.
I've heard some early primary accounts talk about the use of fire to push the deer, and often might be to a water source, a river or something like that, and people would be waiting in canoes, and the fire, and in combination with people pushing the deer, they would go into the water, and then they were shot there. So a bunch of different ways. It wasn't, you know, I think we have this image of the lone guy out there with his bow and arrow sneaking up on deer.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was too important. They may happen by you know, good luck, having to be in the right place at the right time. But usually it was a community effort because the deer was so important to the people. And it would be maybe in many cases several deer at a time. And,
So they didn't have what are called blinds where you're up high in the tree and you know where the deer come, the way everybody does it nowadays, it seems.
not that I've heard. That doesn't mean,
That doesn't,
Yeah.
didn't go back that far?
That-
Oh, you didn't have the trees maybe, because.
Yeah, that's it. They were more. I mean, they would take different ways to camouflage themselves as they were coming in to hunt as they were being pushed in. But yeah, I don't know of any that they were just waiting there. That's a good question. I'll have to ask my friend.
Oh, yeah. It had a platform.
Yeah. Right.
yeah, the
Yeah.
archaeological work that they did in Fort Shantok that's in Montville, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they were excavating in that area, they found at that site 99% of the faunal remains
Yeah.
that were left were white-tailed deer. That's how important it was. I mean, things that they also ate didn't persist in the soil, such as fish and things like that, and
Right.
birds and so forth. But as far as what they found, it was all pretty much all white-tailed deer. That's what
Are they whitetail that are down in Florida? The deer were so much smaller than what we
Yeah,
have here.
the farther south they go, the shorter they get. And the farther north they go, the bigger they get. That's they call that Bergman's rule. You get down the key deer. I was down there several years back, and there was a 10-point buck I saw out there. I said, "Wow, that's impressive." He walked closer, and he's shrinking. He was only this tall.
Really?
Oh, my.
But at a distance, he looked big rack and everything. But yeah, they're pretty tiny. Up in Maine and especially Dakotas and southern part of Canada out there, Saskatchewan and all that, they're big. The bucks can be they're 400 pounds. Here we're lucky if they get 200 is a huge deer back here in Connecticut.
Oh,
You know, so they get huge.
my son is, he was out in Truckee,
Oh.
California, and his dog chased this deer into I don't know which river area, but it was kind of scary because the river was running pretty fast and the deer was swimming and the dog is catching up. But then they kind of went downstream a bit, and my son said it could have ended up being a disaster.
Yeah.
So I have to make sure I keep on leash again.
Yeah.
But it was kind of fascinating watching the deer swim across.
Yeah, they're good swimmers.
They're good swimmers.
Oh,
They're
they're
good
good swimmers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Down in the Keys, down in Florida, they've been seen 8 miles out to sea swimming. And often in the Keys, they'll swim from island. They had their fawns on one island. Mother will swim to another one and feed,
Yeah.
and swim back to the fawn. So they're good. They are good swimmers. They don't look like it, but they do swim well.
Yeah, a lot of the islands around the coast here are called Deer Island because they just migrate. They swim out there and they multiply over there, and the whole island is just filled with deer.
Primary accounts suggest that a lot of New England and even more widespread than just New England, but there was a lot of what do they call it, pyroculture, where they would burn off. Native people would burn off the land, and
Yeah.
primary accounts talk about that everything here in New England was like a park. You could just drive your wagon through the woods, no problem. And so they burned off a lot of underbrush, leaves, stuff like that. And the only places that were left untouched were cedar swamps around here. And so you got these open woods, and it's if you have a whole community that's driving the deer, they'll probably go to the swamp. And so you kind of know where they're going to go, and you can wait
Yeah.
in those situations. I had a friend of mine that lived with the Potawatomi people up in, where was it, Wisconsin? Can't remember what state it was, during the Depression. And people didn't have any money for ammunition. And they get a lot of deep snow up there, so the deer yard up in the winter. And then they make trails that radiate out from that yarding area to some preferred feeding area. And they come back, they use the trail to save energy, and they'll have kind of like spokes on a wheel radiate out. And so when the people needed some food, they'd go to the yard on their snowshoes. The snow may have been 8 foot deep in some cases. And jump the deer. Deer would hit the trail, run to the end of the trail, and the guys on either side would be running along on their snowshoes with a club. Deer would get to the end. The deer didn't turn around. He jumped into the snow.
Yes.
And they knew that. They knew that from experience. So it was that's like going to Stop and Shop and getting your aerobic exercise all at the same time. Out there running on the snowshoes. I don't know. So those usually they don't go awfully far. Maybe a quarter mile or so for these runs. But running in snowshoes a quarter mile is open to work. But that's how they would do it. They didn't have any ammunition during the Depression.
One winter when I was headed out towards Tolland, and the deer were on the road because the banks were really high, and you realize who's the leader here. You know, they looked like they were adolescents, and it's like, well, where should we go now? You know, what are we going to do? But it was a whole pack of deer.
Yep. Yeah, they will follow, just conserve energy in deep snow. They will stay put in a sheltered area. Well, up north, what they call yarding. We don't see that much yarding around here unless it's really super deep snow.
What was it your son was saying that they saw? Where it wasn't Arizona. They were out in Utah, and then they went to Wyoming. Is that where?
Yeah.
A lot of caribou and dead deer because the winter has been so severe.
Yeah, that's why.
It was awful.
Yeah, especially up north with the deep snow, that happens a lot. They get winter kill. You know, because food supplies down, and the buck's been chasing girls all fall. They're worn out. They can't replenish their food, and a lot of them die, or in such a weakened condition they're easily brought down by wolves or whatever that happens in the area.
Even around here, you can see the deer. The deer will come out of the woods and follow the cross-country ski trails.
Oh, they will.
I've seen them do that a lot.
Yeah, they will.
Especially around the reservoir.
Yeah,
Well, it's probably their trails first.
but they will follow the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
They pretty much all the animals will. A cold place to go in the winter is like down to Rails the Trails.
Yeah.
You go down there and it'll be deer tracks, coyote tracks, whatever happens to be in the area. They all come down to that trail. They cover a lot of distance. And even without the snow, they will often follow human trails up there as well.
I'm curious, on Finley Street now, a number of years ago, you were talking about the coyotes and there were signs. Is it still as prevalent of a concern to take your dog over there?
This time of year it is. Yeah, they're having pups right now, so they're going to defend their dens. So yeah, if you come close to a den, you might encounter a coyote. We got bobcats moving through quite a bit too. I came out over there at Finley Street. A bobcat killed a 5-year-old buck.
Really?
But Buck was something happened to him. He didn't struggle, and he had a huge old wound on the back of his leg, so that might have kind of slowed him down. Because from what I could tell, he walked there on his own power, laid down, and Bobcat happened to be in the right place, the right time, and got him. And everything happened in one spot. There was no big struggle. But it was, you could tell it was the Bobcat that killed the deer because of the fresh blood that was all over. But everything was, Bobcats, what you'll see is usually they'll cache, or partially cache, which means they'll cover it up with something, cover the body up with leaves or whatever. In the winter it'd be snow maybe, cover up. And depending on
What, to come back and feed later?
Yeah.
Come back and feed later. They're covered up, sometimes only partially. And they will enter at the chest cavity, bobcats. Usually it'll be wounds on the back of the neck and the throat. Coyotes will be the back end. Coyotes usually enter from the abdomen or the rear end. And they won't. Coyotes don't mind the fur. Bobcats are cats, you know, they're finicky. So they use their side teeth, their carnassials, and they shear all the hair off before they go in. And they open the chest and they'll open the rib cage with their teeth, cut right through the ribs, and usually get the heart and lungs and liver first. Whereas the coyote will go in and eat the open from the abdomen, and go in and might get the liver. Coyotes will eat the rumen, which is all, it's like sauerkraut. It's all fermented vegetable matter, which the coyotes will eat, but bobcats won't. So they will go in and eat that. This time of year, the coyotes love to go after fetal fawns that are inside the mother. So those are kind of difference that you may see around town of the difference between coyote and bobcat predation. And plus, the next day at where that buck was killed, it was big coyote poop, or bobcat poop right next to it. I think he was letting people know that it was his.
Is mine. Yeah.
They don't eat the meat necessarily, it's the organs that they,
Initially, coyotes will eat meat, they will eat meat, but their primary, they want a lot of nutrition, and most of the nutrition is in the organs.
Right.
And bears will go after the brain. Sometimes the bears will go after just the brain alone, that's it. Coyotes will eat some of the internal, like the rumen, with all that sauerkraut in there. They'll eat that. Sometimes you'll see the coyotes will eat on the nose and take tips of the ears off. And that, well, I don't know why they do that. There's not much nutrition there, but they do that. Kind of going off on a tangent here, but but like I say, with that example of people up in the Potawatomi people, they knew their homeland intimately. They knew that, okay, we got a family of raccoons nesting in that tree, and we got coyotes in that burrow over there, and they knew where everything was. They knew where the deer would likely go for cover. They knew where the deer would likely go for feeding. And most deer especially, they generally have a very small core area. They have a home range that's a little bit bigger, but the core area, where they hang around most of the year, maybe a quarter square mile. And they will stay there, especially with does, for their entire life. Stay in the same area. And so people getting intimate with the place know that, okay, Mama Doe's going to be there with her babies. She's going to have the babies probably in this area over here at such and such a time. And so they pretty much from observation, daily observation of a piece of land, they knew it wasn't just. One of the things I like to stress is that to get to know animals, it's important to know the place. The place is what dictates a lot of their movement patterns and who the other animals are that live out there, how that might affect their movements. It's getting to know the animals is really a matter of getting intimate with the place.
Yeah. And when early settlers came here, they saw this land as untamed or wild, but it wasn't. It was well managed by the indigenous people here. They would do like prescribed burns and ways to alter the landscape so a certain species of animal would come into that area and they would hunt that. So it was well managed, and a lot of those early land agreements or treaties included the indigenous people that continue their hunting rights, but that soon was lost because it was just a clash of understanding of how to hunt, different methods and ways of hunting.
But you know, the people that came over, they didn't listen
Yeah.
to, they could have learned so much
Yeah.
more from the Indians and indigenous people.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
Could have left smallpox at home too.
Yeah.
What's that?
They could have left their smallpox at home too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah, a lot of diseases.
What
Yeah,
about
we
the
have any-
ticks, the deer ticks? Are they pretty prevalent also now? There's some other ticks.
I haven't encountered any yet, but one thing I do is I make sure I try to stay on trail or open areas as much as possible. If I'm walking through like blueberry bushes, then I'm gonna probably have some on me. They will, this time of year, the little nymphs, the ones that can barely see, the dangerous ones, because they carry the bacteria, but you can't see them. And they'll be low down to the ground. Is that at this stage they're feeding, they're getting blood meals from rodents.
Oh, okay.
White-footed mice are it's the number one source. That's where the bacteria actually come from, is white-footed mice, not from the ticks. So they will be feeding low, and you find them on your cuffs. So you want to make sure your pants are tucked into your socks or some way of preventing them from sneaking up underneath, working up your leg. Later on, now we're getting this time of year, now they're up, you'll find them higher on your leg because now they're aiming for larger animals, people, dogs, deer, things like that, so they're up a little bit higher. And they have these little hooks on their feet out there waving, and something comes brushing by and they hook onto them. And off they go. So this time of year, you want to look higher, and they'll work their way up. And if you don't have your shirt tucked in, they'll go under your shirt. One year I had, this does the same thing, I guess. I had a wristwatch. And I had one crawl up underneath the band. And it wasn't until a day later that I saw it was under there. So yeah.
Yeah, they're bad this year. I've already counted about 6. I just went off trail and I had 6 on me within 10 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And I use different oils on my skin to deter them. And, deterrent. Different combination of like witch hazel, lemongrass, cedarwood. Some natural oils. That helps a lot. Helps them great. A little bit expensive.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you could
And not
say-
every tick has Lyme disease.
no, I know they just don't.
I just read a recent article, there was a study done. They wanted to know why white-tailed deer do not get Lyme disease. They found out there's some chemical in their blood that actually kills the bacteria. So what that suggests to me is that black-legged tick has been around for a long time because the deer had to evolve to a point where its blood would actually kill that particular tick. The only thing the tick gets from the deer is a blood meal. But it'll be any larger animal this time of year. Like I say, it could be a dog, it could be a deer, it could be a person. All they're doing is getting a blood meal. And Lyme disease, a lot of co-infections now that are Babesia, Ehrlichia,
Yeah.
several others that go along with it that are hard to treat. So it's nothing to be fooled with. So it's important to be cautious when you go out. Make sure you don't wear your outdoor clothes inside.
Yeah.
You know,
Throw them right in the dryer on high heat. Any other questions?
Well, what before the Europeans came in and cleaned the landscape for farming, what would the ideal environment for white-tailed deer historically, prehistorically? Is it woods? Is it fields? Or
I would say
combination? Because
Yeah.
I mean, the deer around here they go to the fields
Right.
at night, but I imagine in the day they're bedding down or hiding in the
And
woods.
there were, the landscape was cleared for fields as well back before European settlement. Most of the rivers were just cornfields, and they were just just fields and fields. All the trees were cut down and burned, and they were kept that way for gardening, but also for the deer, so that the deer would come through on the edge of the forest there, and then they would also hide in the forest as well. But we didn't have all this. We got so much thick leaves, so thick. When you're out there, you're stepping and walking, you just hear everything. But it wasn't always like that. There was fires that were just controlled and took care of that, and took care of a lot of the ticks and other
Right.
insects and things. So yeah.
Well, you mean your people would start the fire?
Mhm.
Because they do that in Australia, and they let the fields burn
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
30 days or so,
Yeah.
and then they get the new growth.
They need to do that here. They're into, yeah. But I would say fields, huh?
Yeah, the deer are what they call edge. They like edge
Yeah.
habitat.
Right.
The meadows down on the river.
Glastonbury or that?
Oh, well.
Just,
There's several, but the place
Okay.
called the Meadows, I think don't they have a concert show?
Oh, okay, so,
The meadows?
so that's along the river.
Yeah, that-
Connecticut River.
Yeah, that was put on cornfields. And it's called the Meadows. This was up here where we have the Bolton Lakes. That was originally called the Great Meadows. That was a huge meadow. That I think was naturally occurring through the work of beaver. So they had, the beavers dam the stream. Then when beavers go, after the trees die and everything, then you get a wet meadow that spreads out. So that's a result. That's a result of beaver activity. And then at the far end of the lakes is the cedar swamp. So that was ideal habitat because you had the meadows right next to a good place to hide
Right.
up in the cedar swamp. And that didn't burn off. It's all wet up in there. We got a lot of places in Connecticut. Cedar Swamp Road is just about in every single town in Connecticut. And to me, that's something to pay attention to as far as historically. That had some significance to the people that lived here. Where the Cedar Swamp was.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes, yes.
You know how we say thank you in our language?
No.
It's, I'll teach you how to say thank you. Toe, butt, knee. Toe, butt, knee.
Okay.
That's easy to remember.
Butt,